All right, Ben, you do law-related things, right?
Yep.
Are we gonna go to jail?
Yes.
Oh.
A little bit too much confidence on
That
that.
was, yeah, that was
Not,
pretty...
not a fan of...
You don't need to, like, look something up or make some calls because...
no. He's an accessory now.
Was it the throwing stars with the slingshot or the thermite or...
All of it.
The modern rogue infiltrates state legislature.
We are here with Ben Billups, policy analyst for the Texas State Legislature, all of which is voodoo as far as I'm concerned. I have to rely on local news to explain three things: which house cats were recently saved, policy analysis, and the weather on the fives.
That's good, that's good. What does a policy analyst do?
You read the bill, and then you summarize it for the legislator.
Okay, but the bills come from the legislature. They can't they don't have email or they don't have time.
Oh, they're all online, but nobody reads them.
Nobody reads them.
Nah.
The actual bill.
Well, some of them do. Some of them read all of them. The good ones do.
So most people don't know anything about legislation, really. They have a vague idea that you send an idea to the Congress and maybe they make it a law or whatever, and then that's all we know.
No. They have trial by combat.
They have trial by combat.
Sometimes in the House they do throw things, though.
Wait, for reals?
Yeah, it's happened.
Like throwing stars?
Things have been thrown, not stars. They don't have anything interesting like that in the building.
You work for the group of legislators, and so one of them writes a, let's say, 5-page thing. Everyone else rolls their eyes, says, I ain't got time to read 5 pages. And then you translate and say, hey guys, basically he likes the color green. He thinks this monument should be green.
Yep.
And then that's what they vote up and down
because
on?
in the law, that's verbose. It has all kinds of language and definitions in it where you can actually turn that into a paragraph or two.
So you just summarize stuff for the people that should be reading it to begin with.
That's
He's
right.
Cliff. He's Cliff's Notes. That's it for legislation.
Congressional Cliff Notes.
Hey, I'm Cliff.
Hey, Cliff,
Hey,
good to
what's
see
going
you.
on? Hey.
With that being the case, it seems like you would have an inordinate amount of power as far as, because you could phrase something factually true in two different ways, one that makes it sound good and bad.
Yeah.
Have you found yourself in that position where you feel like you're shaping the reaction in advance?
He probably wouldn't want to admit to that, but go ahead. Well, give your honest
Hey
answer.
man, it speaks for himself.
Well, the idea is not to do that. You want to represent it as objectively as possible. Whether or not socially there are biases that come across is debatable.
Yeah.
So
So like, don't add phrases like super hot and totally rad into your summary.
Those generally decrease credibility.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, stinky ass.
yeah.
Don't put that one
No.
in there.
No.
This stinky ass federal highway needs to be torn down.
Yeah.
No? Okay.
Yeah, you wouldn't say things like that. But the other thing is there's a lot of organizations that will analyze bills. I worked for Texas Action, which is the only organization that analyzed all of the bills.
Okay.
But there's a lot of lobbyists and different folks who do read the bills in specific areas. And so generally speaking, if what you're putting out is not accurate, they'll find that out.
Wait a minute. So it never occurred to me, when you make a summary, only your summary is what everyone reads, or do you compete, you summarize it multiple ways?
It depends on the subject and where it comes from. So Texas Action is the premier independent institution that gives out policy analysis, and they're nonpartisan. They try to phrase things as objectively as possible, but lobbyists tend to be experts about their subject matters, and so if you ask a lobbyist, they'll generally give you pretty objective information. So it just depends on where you get your information from. But you're not really competing, because if your information is accurate, there's no competition.
Okay, and there's like a season for this, right? They're not constantly, in my mind, it's just a giant, I think I'm thinking of Parliament, where they're just shouting at each other at all times.
Yeah, the mothership.
Yes, Funkadelic, yeah.
So do you find that like a lot of people, like particularly like journalists who are presenting this to the public, get a lot of stuff wrong?
Keep in mind, the reason that we're so fascinated by this is that it seems like the perfect 21st century modern rogue would not be somebody who needs everything spoon-fed by local Channel 13, but instead who can look, like I want to be able to read the source code the way, like you're looking at the Matrix. I want to do that with law.
I want to know that I'm not being lied to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing, is you're at the mercy of the journalist. If they're a good journalist, or if it's a good publication, the information may be accurate. It's likely to be accurate, but you don't know. And so if you want to verify that for yourself, you need to know how to read the law.
Okay, so first of all, where do you go to even read all this stuff? I'm sure everyone's got their own different unique state, whatever. What's ours?
So for Texas, it's Texas Legislature Online, TLO.
Okay.
And you can search by bill number or topic, or you can do all kinds of searches. You can see the bill histories, how they progress, and read all the versions.
So that
it's all
was my
online.
big question. So it even has old stuff that never made it
Yep.
to okay, wow.
Every bill
So
that gets filed goes online.
outside of the cartoon with the piece of paper singing a song,
Yeah.
That's the only way I know that a bill can become a law.
Yeah.
Is there any non-singing ways that it can happen?
Yes.
Okay.
In fact, that's how it happens most of the time.
Oh,
is without singing.
without singing.
That's right.
Really?
And, yeah.
We were lied to.
You know what you should do? You should put that process in a song. That way I would remember it.
That's a great idea.
From the moment somebody takes action to the moment it becomes a bill, how long does that usually take?
So in the Texas legislature, the sessions last 140 days. They can be filed from day one. But then they go through an entire process, and then they can be passed at any point in that process. But it usually takes a while. But any bills that are passed within that
Wait, and
time
so that
frame.
means if when they're out of session, no matter how important the law, like let's say somebody with the salt and pepper beard keeps punching me, and I'm like,
Yeah.
can we make that illegal? They're like, you'll have to wait till they're back in session, and then they get back in session. I'm like, hey, could we make it illegal? They'll be all like, we'll think about it.
And then maybe it'll happen.
Maybe.
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 Now,
Maybe
the
not.
governor
Probably
can
not.
also call special sessions, which last a maximum of 30 days.
Why do they call special sessions?
Because stuff the governor wanted to happen didn't happen most of the time. Or I'm sorry, important agenda items were not addressed in the regular session.
All right, so walk us through the process of how someone's idea for a law actually becomes a law.
Right. So first thing is the legislator has the idea. Either it's their idea or it's constituent. They want to change the law.
Tony Stark
Yeah.
calls him up and says, hey, I got an idea.
That's right.
Okay.
And so they take it upon themselves. And so they can either have their staff write the law, but the bottom line is most laws already have a place to exist in the code because we have so many laws.
Right.
And so you're typically editing or adjusting existing code. And so what they typically do is they allow the legislative council to draft the bill because they have all the smart people that know where all the things are in the code. And so they say, hey, I want this guy to stop punching me.
Right.
And they say, oh, well, that's in this part of the code and we need to change the language to say this.
So they look for the closest thing that is close to already addressing, if not exactly that, something close
Right.
to it, and then amend it. Like also, if you have a majestic salt and pepper beard, please stop punching Brian Brescher.
Exactly.
Got it.
And then,
It's majestic. He's never said that before. That's pretty.
yeah, so they would file that bill.
Yeah.
And then it would have first reading early in the session. They just read the caption and then assign it to a committee.
So they get everyone in the room.
Yeah.
And they're like, here's the name of a thing, and everyone's like, cool.
Yeah.
And then they hand it to someone else.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, in order to get the bills processed, they divide it up into committees. So the committees will have, anywhere between 5 to 15
So
legislators.
like experts on that particular topic.
Usually, yes.
Supposed
Supposed to be.
Yeah, but
ideally.
And I guess basically they're just listening to the titles, waiting for one to be like, Charles Xavier wants $1 billion. And then they're
right.
like, whoa, that like.
It's kickback time and they go into high gear
Okay,
and
all
yeah.
right, all right.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
really?
No. It's definitely not what happens. Yeah.
Yeah, I got something in my eyes here. Oh, God.
I'm sure that doesn't happen at all.
So most bills die in committee because they don't have time to be heard.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's like
time crunch.
You got to have some sizzle to your steak. You got to get everyone excited.
Yeah, and typically if you have political leverage, then your bill will get a hearing. But
That's what he means. Money.
Influence.
ideally, the bills that need to get a hearing get a hearing.
Okay.
Then what they do is they have testimony, and so depending on how controversial or complicated the bill is, they'll have people come in and testify. Experts or individuals who would be affected by the law will come in and testify. They'll hear the bill. Then the committee will vote on it. That's
Okay.
another place where it can die. So it can either die without getting a hearing, or it can die when the committee votes on
So
it.
it can literally die of boredom.
Yep.
Or if it's interesting enough that you get to a vote, it could die of being ahead of its time.
Right.
This is before it even gets to the floor.
Kind of like
right.
the Flash Gordon movie.
Yep.
Yeah, so if the committee
Totally.
passes it, right, so if the majority of the committee allows the bill to go to the floor, then it goes to the calendars committee, then the bill can be put on a calendar.
Yeah.
And then it goes to the floor.
And the floor is like the one time everyone's in the room.
That's right.
And then they put thumbs up, down, they hold up paddles.
There are
they-
multiple different ways to vote. There's like the button, then there's
Yep.
vocally.
Yep.
psychic votes. That's the thing.
Psychic
Oh, yeah.
votes.
No.
Yeah.
Trial by combat?
No. Trial by wombat.
They hit
is
the
real,
buttons.
Now this is all in the House. And then
Right.
it goes, if it passes, then it goes to the Senate.
That's
and
right. So
pretty
if
much
it-
starts the process over.
Exactly. It does that entire thing again. It gets assigned to Senate committee, then it goes into calendar, then it goes before the full Senate, then the Senate has to pass it, and then it can be signed by the governor.
Not gonna lie, Ben, this sounds like a huge pain in the ass.
So I'm sitting on the couch watching the local news. They just did an adorable story about a puppy who saved a kitten by eating enough hot dogs. And then they go into reporting on some bill. They mention it. I go to TLO and now I'm looking at the source code. I'm looking at the actual legislation. What are the secret words I'm looking for?
Right. So when you find it in Texas Legislature online, you pull up the bill. What you're looking for is you're effectively reading the law and how they propose to amend it. So there's a couple main ways that they edit it. If it's underlined, it's new words. If it's plain text, it's the existing verbiage. And then if it's struck out, then that's words they're taking out of the code.
Got it.
So it's pretty straightforward in that sense. There's a lot of other ways it can get complicated.
Just like editing a Word document,
Yeah.
it's just, okay, yeah, pretty
Yeah.
straightforward. What are the key things to look for aside from the edits in there? Are there any like little tricky codes or anything like that?
There aren't any like magic words, we think.
I mean, I was about, yeah, come on. Let's, between you, me, and the wall, we know
right.
there are magic
That's
words.
right.
Yeah.
So when you're reading it, obviously you want to read it very carefully. Typically online, the portions of code that it's changing are hyperlinked. So you can actually click on those and go read the existing law as it stands, and then have a better understanding of how that's changing current law.
See, I think that's the first key that I hadn't put together, is that in my mind, all the bills, all the laws are written in a vacuum, but they're not. They're all amendments to existing laws. So,
Right.
so reading the original first and getting a sense of what is and isn't real gives you an idea of whether or not this is granting more freedoms that weren't previously there,
Right.
or placing new restrictions on something.
It helps eradicate repetition and keep the books as clean as possible?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
are there any gotchas in there that we need to worry about?
Well, I mean, typically there's obviously just basic legal reading where, you know, things like and is very different than or. So if you're reading penalties and it says, you know, if you violate the law, this will happen, this
6
will happen,
months and
this will happen
$10,000,
versus
yeah.
or this will happen.
Sure.
Things like that. So there's just basic sort of clear reading.
Okay.
The other thing you want to look out for are repealed provisions, sometimes in the middle, but typically at the bottom, it will list the provisions that the bill is repealing entirely. So it won't just strike out the code, it'll say this whole portion, either this like subsection or this chapter, whatever, is repealed.
Got it.
And you want to go look at that and understand what they're pulling out of the code.
Read all the way to the end.
Yep.
Do you ever see any bills go maybe farther than they should, and then some legislators realize, oh, we didn't realize that was in there?
Oh yeah.
That happens
That
a lot?
definitely happens. I mean, we would publish analysis on some bills, and we would get called by the office at times, and they would tell us that it wasn't in there, and we'd give them the line number, and they would say, oh. So sometimes there are things in the bills.
All of this happens before the actual votes, right? Or I guess sometimes after the votes?
Unless they aren't caught. That's why we exist.
Okay.
So we read the bills, we put it all into the summary.
Okay.
They can call us and tell us we're wrong. We can tell them that they're wrong.
Got it.
And they can understand. So that's our function.
Okay, well, all right, you brought some sample legislation for us, right?
Yep.
All right, what are we looking at?
So bills have captions. These are supposed to summarize what the law is doing.
Okay.
It's not everything, but it's most of it.
And
you can
this
understand.
is usually at the beginning of it, or?
That's right. They just put the caption right up at the top. And so you can read that and get a very broad idea of what they're trying to do. My favorite bill that I analyzed for the entire legislature was HB 3535.
Is this it?
It's this one right here.
Okay.
HB stands for House Bill?
That's right. And SB is for Senate bill.
Oh, okay.
HB number 3535, a bill to be entitled an act relating to the taking of certain feral hogs and coyotes using a hot air balloon.
So
Wait,
like
the stealing of the taking of them?
It actually means hunting.
Okay, like a calling of the herd or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
oh, that's the next Modern Rogue episode. We're getting in hot air balloons.
Yeah.
We're hunting feral
Absolutely.
Oh my
hogs.
God, we're gonna
It's
wear
legal
those
now,
safari
actually.
hats and wait, this
This,
passed?
this was signed by the governor.
Texas.
Texas!
Be it enacted by the legislature of the state of Texas, Section 1, Subchapter G, Chapter 43, Parks and Wildlife Code is amended by adding Section 431076, which says, using hot air balloons to take certain animals, a qualified landowner or landowner's agent, as determined by commission rule, may contract to participate as a hunter or observer in using a hot air balloon to take depredating feral hogs or coyotes under the authority of a permit issued under this subchapter. So is this a case where hot air balloons specifically weren't covered or were previously excluded?
Because
not-
previously you could hunt from a helicopter.
Yeah,
That's right.
But not from a hot air balloon.
That's right.
Why?
Well, it didn't specifically say that you couldn't, but now it's in the law verbatim that you can.
Man, because that's what I always want to be silent killer.
In a sense, it solves a real problem. In 2011, they passed the bill that allowed this in a helicopter. And the idea is that there's all these feral wild hogs
Yeah.
that cause all kinds of damage to property. And so they want to provide a way to hunt that. Why exactly this representative felt that he had to allow that in a hot air balloon is still a mystery to me.
Yeah.
But it is actually a real problem. And so part of that too is that when you're reading a bill, you want to make sure that you understand the context. So you can look at the current law, you can look at the law as they're changing it.
Yep.
But if you don't understand what problem it's solving,
Yeah.
sometimes you still are totally clueless. So in addition to House bills and Senate bills, HB and SB, there's what they call House concurrent resolutions and Senate concurrent resolutions.
That's where it's going through both processes simultaneously?
No. But that does happen.
As I would have thought with the word concurrent.
Yeah,
Nutty.
sure.
Yeah.
Reasonable conclusion there, Brian.
Basically, they're not laws. They're typically urging Congress to do something, or they're expressing an opinion from the legislature. And so they can be passed, they don't have to be signed by the governor, things like that.
Got it.
So there's different kinds of bills. There's also joint resolutions on the House and the Senate. That's when they're trying to amend the Constitution of Texas.
Wow.
And so
right.
what they do is they propose an amendment to the Constitution.
Yeah.
If the legislature passes that amendment, it doesn't actually go into the Constitution yet, it goes before the public for vote. So when you see those provisions when you're voting
Yeah.
that have an amendment to the Constitution, that was already passed by the legislature.
Now they just
now
need
the
the
people are
public's
deciding whether or not it goes in the Constitution.
Oh, okay. We have something here that I couldn't help but notice. You hand wrote emojis
Yes.
at the top. What?
So this is a concurrent resolution. It's a House concurrent resolution that pleads the people of Texas not to use the flag of Chile emoji when referring to Texas.
Okay, so it's not a law, but it's like, hey, we need some awareness on this because I may or may not be guilty of posting that. I'm like, that doesn't look right. What's? Oh, it's the flag of Chile.
What does the Chile flag look like?
It looks like the Texas flag.
Well, so this is a non-binding opinion, basically.
Yes.
Whereas most major electronic messaging applications provide a number of flag emojis, including that of the Republic of Chile, but the official flag of Texas, known as the Lone Star flag, is not included in the selection. And whereas all too often the Chilean flag emoji is used as a substitute for the Lone Star flag in text messaging and on social media platforms, the Chilean flag proudly represents its country, but despite its similarity to the Texas flag, does not represent the state of Texas. And whereas the colors of the Chilean flag depict sky, snow, and blood spilled while fighting for freedom, but the blue, white, and red of the Lone Star flag stand for Texan values of loyalty, purity, and bravery. And whereas the single star of the Chilean flag, positioned in a blue canton, as seen by some as a guide to the progress and honor, while others have to interpret it to I can't.
You were doing so well.
I was feeling it.
Got me
dude.
like
I
right
just,
there.
I just want to picture just buckets of sweat pouring off this
Yeah.
dude in an all white. It's Boss Hog I'm picturing.
Super important.
Super important.
Super important to worry about. So House concurrent bills, basically, who gives a shit?
They're cheers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all it is, right? Like,
Yeah.
I want to make a lot of noise. I like Texas.
Now, sometimes they will ask Congress to approve funding for a coral reef barrier, and there's important things that can happen in there, but they're non-binding.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay, so kind of a waste of time.
A little bit.
It's a little bit of grandstanding sometimes for people
yeah.
to get attention.
Yep.
This one says Bowie knife.
Hey, let's hear it.
So, House concurrent resolution, which means.
That it's non-binding.
Would you?
I will. House concurrent resolution. Whereas, forever associated with Jim Bowie and the heroic Battle of the Alamo, the Bowie knife has long been a vivid and colorful symbol of the history and heritage of Texas. And whereas, it is thought that the first Bowie knife was made by Resin Bowie, Jim's brother, during the 1820s, when the two siblings were in business together in Iola's.
No, keep going, keep going.
No.
Like, where's the part? It's just
go to the
whereas,
end.
whereas,
So,
whereas,
whereas.
the weapon's fame grew when Jim Bowie took it. Whereas, during an era when guns are often misfired.
Whereas, I found a really cool one at 3 Star Pond down on William Cannon and Slaughter Lane.
And here goes, resolved that the 85th legislature of the state of Texas hereby designate the Bowie knife as the official state knife of Texas.
No, denied. It is the katana.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. It really is a lot of grandstanding, a lot of being seen saying these things that, you know, I guess the hope is somebody's like, yeah, man, I like knives. I like the way this guy talked about knives.
Yeah.
Also, I'm a stereotype of a Texan.
Yeah.
But it's okay, because I am Texan.
I'm gonna sit there and watch C-SPAN in case they talk about knives. maybe guns or maybe titties. One of those things.
Hey, welcome to Knife Watch. We watch C-SPAN all day, no knives. We'll see you tomorrow on Knife Watch.
Well, and actually, the committee hearing for this bill, they basically just sat around for 45 minutes patting each other on the back about the Bowie knife.
Really?
Yeah.
Just like
They were all just fantastic.
what do you like about the Bowie knife?
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I like that it stabs things.
Yep.
Amazing.
yeah.
like
So
spiders
you
for
can also do official designations, so you can designate knives and other objects as official state texts and concurrent
Now that does
resolutions.
have implications when it comes to like tariffs, whether or not something is like a Santa Claus outfit. Is that a costume or is it clothing?
Right.
Because they have different import taxes based
So
on it.
you would be able to, in theory, even just in the market, charge more for a official Texas Bowie knife.
What's this raw milk
so
one?
these are actually, this is what I want y'all to read.
Oh,
Oh, we got two copies.
Yep.
All right, so this is one everyone can play along with at home.
It's TLO, right?
Yeah, Texas Legislature Online. This is House Bill 57 from the 85th regular session.
Okay.
I'm gonna read it quietly.
Yeah, just one second. Everyone, go read among yourselves.
Yep. This is dumb.
What do you think it says?
It's about the regulation of sales and the handling and storage of raw milk.
Yep.
Aha. Okay, first of all, everything underlined is new verbiage,
Right? Which is a lot. It's all underlined.
Yes, okay, but it says subchapter 8, 435 is amended by adding these sections below, which is 435 0061, 0062, and 0063. So basically, they're adding all of the underlined stuff. And then the part I noticed was this sly little, oh, by the way, this other section that has nothing to do with any of this is repealed. So it seemed to me, if that's the section about stabbing people in the throat and all of a sudden that's repealed, that might sneak past you.
Is section 2 even in here?
No, it's not.
You would have to go look it up. So what do you think it does in the overall? What do you think it's effectively doing?
You can't sell raw milk without a permit, and if you do, you have to handle it in these ways. Store it below this
Correct.
temperature.
Package it, sell it within 5 days, that kind of stuff. But I'm more concerned about what's repealed on there. But there's no way for me to know that from this document, right?
Not from right here.
Okay.
Yeah. Online, you'd be able to click and just go look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there something we missed? Do we walk right past the big one?
It's repealed the law that all milk has to come from condors. Well, I'm very familiar with 453.013. I've never seen a condor, but I've had condor milk. So have you.
At the San Diego Zoo, they have a condor, and a condor, people don't realize, it's just a giant vulture. It's a hideous bird.
But their milk is very nutritious.
So overall, is it increasing or decreasing regulation?
It looks like it's increasing.
Increasing.
Because it's adding all this stuff, right?
Totally increasing.
Except it's not.
It's not?
It's not.
Wait, so what was it?
So,
Explain yourself.
yep. Under current law, raw milk, the section that this is adding to, if you go and look and read that,
Yeah.
raw milk can only be sold at the point of production, which is the farm. So this is actually enabling raw milk to be sold in more venues. And then the section on the last page that's being repealed is repealing the authority of municipalities to only allowing pasteurized milk in retail markets.
And so I guess the key on this one is to always check, and you said it's easy, just a hyperlink away,
Yep.
to check what's being thrown out
That's right.
for each of these.
So the context of the bill is actually that it's usurping some municipal power.
Yeah.
It's taking some power away from local entities, unifying the code, and also allowing sale in more places, so slightly deregulating, but then creating a permit process for that as well. So whether or not it's overall a regulation or deregulation, probably mostly deregulation.
Yeah.
But also unifying code for the whole state rather than allowing it to be different wherever you
So
are.
even though we're seeing a lot of regulations, these are a lot of regulations in an area that was previously totally forbidden.
So you could say it's
Increased freedom,
yeah,
liberties.
exactly, but also increased regulation. So depending on how you look at it, if that adds too much complication, if that makes it more available, so there's all kinds of ways you can opinionate on that, but you have to understand at least what it's doing in context.
And so there can be some tricky wording in here because we both thought, oh, this is totally like.
This looks like more of the man trying to keep my raw milk empire down.
But was this passed? Is this like a thing?
No, actually, this version was only filed. It never even got a hearing.
Oh. Wow. Okay.
There was a version in the Senate, a companion bill, so that's
Yeah.
another thing that can happen. They filed very similar or even identical versions of the bill in the House and the Senate to increase chances.
Yeah.
And then in the Senate version, it actually passed the Senate, made it over to the House, and also was not even referred to committee.
Wow. But that's intentional because you hear about the purposeful time that laws take to get passed, and it's slow and deliberate for a reason. It's so that we can't pass crazy stuff in the course of 24 hours.
Yeah, crazy stuff like, oh, I don't know, letting people sell milk from a cow. That's nutty. So as a proper gentleman rogue, your obligation would be to look at your local state legislature website, which is apparently open to everyone, right? You don't need a special account. And you can read both legislation that is in the process of being created and the current law, right? And
even stuff that didn't make it through, stuff that was proposed but never got approved, maybe never even made it to the floor. You can read all of that stuff too.
Is it worth checking up on legislation that you've been following for a while, but then you got distracted and now it's finally up for a vote? Is that something that changes as it goes along?
It is. If you hear about something and you're interested in a law that's being passed, it can change throughout the process, and you can actually subscribe online to get email updates on individual bills.
Each time there's a revision on there.
That's right. So when it's put in committee, they can do what they call a committee substitute. And I mean, I've seen committee substitutes that bear zero resemblance to the original bill. So there's a lot of liberty with that. Then on the floor, they can make floor amendments, which you can argue about whether or not they're germane. And so that's a little bit tighter. But they can amend it on the floor. And then also actually, even once a bill is passed by both houses, it can go into what's called a conference committee to reconcile differences between the version that was passed in the House and the Senate.
So if there's a particular piece of legislation that you really want to follow, definitely sign up on that. And I guess the moment you see something that you don't like, a revision that moves away from what you want, and this is the part we become a cliche, you pick up your phone.
Call your representative.
Call your legislator,
Exactly. But I would say probably one of the most sinister things to look out for in the process where it can really be gamed is if a bill makes it through both houses. Before it's signed by the governor, if there's differences between the House and the Senate version, it goes into conference committee where they try to reconcile the differences, and they're supposed to make non-substantive changes.
Right.
Unless they do what they call an out-of-bounds amendment, where I've seen bills, the entirety of bills that did not get passed, tacked on to bills that did get passed, so that they could then be signed by the governor.
Holy cow! Especially when there's a bill that they know is going to go through, like the Hooray for Texas bill. Everyone knows they're going to sign it.
The budget, it has to be passed every session. It's basically a free-for-all.
That's how we make it illegal. You're not going to budge me anymore.
Yeah, you put it in the budget.
I think maybe we need some Texas budgetary little goodness, some dosh for the modern rogues, some shekels.
Oh, wait, are you talking about bribery?
No, just some money that to keep the lights on.
So the good news is there's a process, and it's basically a miracle if a bill becomes a law. The bad news is there are gaps where...
What is the ratio? How many bills are made for every law that actually passes?
This past legislature, there was about 10,000 bills that were filed.
Whoa!
And that's between HBSBs, SJRs, all the bill types. And then only a few thousand actually get signed into law. So it's a very low success rate.
How many would you read in a session as a policy analyst?
Just last session, I read over 1,100.
And so what we read are the actual laws, not the summaries, right?
That's right.
They're way smaller than I anticipated.
I picked smaller ones.
Okay, good. Good.
We're in baby mode. It's preschool.
I'd like something that maybe fits on a Laffy Taffy wrapper, like there's a little joke.
You get a joke and a law.
And a law, yeah.
If you want to read a long, complicated bill, just find one about an alternative fuel program. It's probably about 50 pages.
Wow.
Tons of things crossed out, underlined.
Dude, Ben, that was amazing, man. Where can we see more of your stuff?
Well, you can find me online. I do a show every Friday called Overthinker, overthinker.show. And that's a show where I try to understand the entire world every Friday.
Wow.
And then there is a new tech podcast I'm about to put out with a couple other guys called Tech Rebel, and that's at techrebel.show.
Right on. Dude, thank you so much.
Absolutely, thank you.
I feel smart.
I'm gonna get some laws now.
I'm gonna run away from your salt and pepper beard.
You're going down.
Chilean flag, attack.
Whereas Brian needs to be punched repeatedly.
No!